as a citizen, so what was your initial reaction to the budget?
I actually don't normally react to budgets because budget is an annual exercise and will happen. And of course, government plays a fairly critical and important role in the evolution of in the evolution of all our lives. But I don't think so. Over a period of time, I've noticed the significance of budget per se has reduced. Now, the reason why probably this budget is slightly more specific, that is coming in a post-COVID world where things have really jolted the economy. It has also impacted an average Indian. So therefore, there was certain kind of unsurety about what the budget will bring in. Some people were very hopeful, and some people were very nervous. And I think from that perspective, the budget had a significant amount of interest, probably which goes beyond just being an annual milestone. So I saw it from that perspective, and I was curious to see what kind of budget is proposed. It's also very interesting to learn how leaders perceive the role of the budget, especially those in the government. How do they see the role of the budget? So it was interesting, and my personal take from the budget was that it did get a reasonably secular response, in that sense that some people were very, very happy, some people were unhappy, and so it was very democratic and evenly distributed. But on par, it looks like more people were happy than unhappy, and it's a fact that 90% of the people don't really understand until unless a provision of the budget impacts them.
So like, what would be your reaction when you looked at a perspective of a stakeholder in the ecosystem, startup ecosystem? So
from a startup ecosystem perspective, I think since the time 2014, the word startup has actually started finding resonance within the budget. That itself is quite revolutionary, because before 2014, there was no acknowledgement that this category existed. I think probably the most notable intervention that I saw was the registration of one-person companies, which is quite interesting, because this was a question that has been raised multiple times by a lot of entrepreneurs as to, you don't want us to mix families, so it's husband, wife registering a company. Also, you don't want us to do that, but then you need two people, and who do you trust other than your wife, etc. As an investor, I have heard that question and statements multiple times. And I also think, because I worked in innovation ecosystem earlier, that there probably is a lot of innovators who want to register a company. And most of these innovators are alone. And so they wanted to actually have the authority and the capability to register a one-person company. So that may be actually behind that idea. But one-person company actually gives you some level of flexibility. So that seemed like very notable. Of course, the extension of the two tax holidays by 1 year was positive. I think people expected more, because the capital gains tax exemption is largely relevant for angel investors. And then so this is actually to deal with specifics, and these are small incentives for early stage entrepreneurs. And I think these were some of the more obvious things that I could see in the budget for the startups.
Right. So our Honorable PM, before the budget, he said that the budget should be taken as part of a series of mini budgets that were announced in the pandemic scenario. So what's your take on that?
Well, that's true, because if you are going to actually set aside a fairly significant amount of capital in terms of the liquidity that was created I think during the pandemic, some of the most of the interventions that came were largely from the monetary policy side, from Reserve Bank of India, creating significant amount of liquidity in the system, and also trying to find various mechanisms and means to address the capital or the debt needs of companies, whether it is micro, small, medium, from microfinance onwards, right up to medium enterprise and to large enterprises. Most of it came from the monetary policy. I think that it also, so there was very clear hints that the government will continue to be quite, in some sense, I'm the word that I'm looking for is actually soft, very soft towards releasing capitals, and I think they continue to do that by coming up with a budget where the growth parameter, the growth paradigm, probably actually for an interesting reason stumped the prudence paradigm in that sense. I won't say it's prudence, but basically the fiscal prudence part, where you don't want your fiscal deficit to grow beyond a point. So I think they have erred on the side of growth, which I think in the short term is very good. Of course, we'll have to keep an eye on inflation and other inflationary and other targets that may actually compound issues down the line once you start trying to withdraw from the very liquid, high liquidity situation that prevails in the country right now. But it's good in the short run. It is good. I'm not complaining.
I mean, we can expect a lot of mini budgets in future as well. So they'll be taking corrective actions as required.
Yes, and I think that also actually is a fairly obvious part of this government strategy. We saw this during demonetization also. They generally react. So first they propose something, and in case there are feedbacks and listen, they are accepting of it. Of course, some people see that as actually too reactive, and therefore there is too much confusion. But I normally prefer a little bit more confusion than complete lack of feedback loop. Maybe what one can do, or as the government gets older and more experienced, they may actually make sure that some of the feedback issues are taken care of in the pre-planning, so that you don't need to make so many adjustments down the line.
Right. So one of the mini budgets was about the Startup Seed Fund, which was announced last month itself. So what's your take on that? How do you think there will be some implementation challenges?
So see, India has a fairly evolved startup economy, and the Startup Seed Fund, which was, I think if I'm not wrong, it's 1,000 crore or 950 crore, something like that.
945.
Yeah, 945 crores. So that's actually a fairly good thing. Now, of course, the fine print, reading of the fine print is important. What exactly does it intend to do? Is it actually 2 crores to 1,800 companies? Is that what the order is? Or is it 5 crores? Is it a calibrated venture capital approach? Or is it a venture capital approach that will be more spray and pray, which is, there's nothing wrong with that approach. It's actually a wide variety and wide horizon extension, given that probably this capital will not be under a pressure of returning 20% return on investment, ROA. So a lot will depend on what the mission and motive behind this capital is. My guess is, given that this fund has been brought in spite of the 10,000 crore fund of funds that was launched earlier, which has actually been a key factor behind a lot of new funds being launched in India, probably is to demonstrate government's desire to support startups and fund most of them. This is not a merit-based investment, but probably a democratic investment, which means you will actually have a very wide funnel where everybody will receive capital.
Right. Like you, since you are an impact investor, one observation about this budget is that government is focusing a lot of impact sectors. That's your healthcare, water, sanitization, pollution. So what's your take on that as an impact investor?
So, see, impact investor is actually a very small player in the big challenge of making a difference in the lives of the people. And government, of course, in a country like India, government plays the largest role. So we are a small player in a very large space where government is the dominating player. And any provisions that government makes towards healthcare, towards education, towards sanitation, towards Swachh Bharat is actually very, very progressive and very supportive. How do I see it as an investor? If I invest in a company that is playing in, let's say, education or healthcare or in water or sanitation or micro irrigation or in agriculture, then these policies actually support the enterprise, and therefore their chances of success go up. Because these are also very challenging ecosystems, and institutions require some level of support from the government for them to succeed. And so we see it very positive.
So do you see private players rushing in the sector?
I think, see, we have to actually be very clear. It's very difficult for private sector to rush into anything because the capital has asks And so you can rush in where you can invest and get out very quickly. But if you are a venture capital or an impact investor, we are looking at long horizon investments. And the only thing that probably it will do is help some of the impact investors to genuinely demonstrate scale potential of impact enterprises. And that would then actually spur more investment in the sector. So you're going to create a virtuous cycle of performance leading to exits, leading to reinvestments, and then performance, etc., which I think is very positive for the sectors that we want to impact.
So my observation is that a venture in impact sector, there's a higher probability of them being a success, because it's a probability, despite being like a higher initial cash outlay, they can become profitable. However, they are not like a very key, like, what do you say, that word I'm saying is darlings for the VCs and angel investors. Why is that?
True, actually, that's not true. That's not true. I think India is the only country in the world where the impact and the mainstream is actually merged. So the fact is, if you look at Avishkar's investments, all our companies are actually raising. Our follow-on investors are people like Axel, Chirate, JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley, Eversource. I mean, many different kinds of investors, Bertelsmann. And these are not classical impact investors. These are purely investors who are coming with venture capital or private equity thought processes. And not necessarily, and I'm not only talking about Avishkar investee companies, but other investee companies, whether it is Omnivore or Ankur Capital or anybody else who's actually an impact investor in India. You would see a wide variety of capital that is following through. And this is happening because a mainstream investor is not averse to the idea of impact if two things can be taken care of. One, the market opportunity is huge. And interestingly, the social sector offers very large market opportunities. And second, the business model is very clean. So that means there is no confusion. And then you have a good quality entrepreneur with a high quality corporate governance. These are the four things any investor is looking for. And if you as impact investor is able to demonstrate these four things, then the follow-on investors will be largely from mainstream. And one of the reasons why impact investing is thriving in India is because the seamlessness that exists between impact investing and mainstream investing.
Right. So for an impact venture, in its nascent stages, I mean, they may need to require a lot of outlay capital. So how do you suggest that a venture should sail through before actually approaching a VC?
So I think first you have to understand VC is a strategy. So what is venture capital? Venture capital is a strategy where an investor is taking significant amount of risk while investing in a disruptive idea which is riding on technology to gain disproportionate return. So technology is crucial, disproportionate risk is possible, and disproportionate return is important. And all this has to be done in an evolved ecosystem. So that's why you see a lot of venture investors only investing in technology ecosystems, where they can see if a disruptive company comes in, there's a lot of people who will follow through. And then there are potential ways of exit. For example, we don't have a NASDAQ equivalent in India, but you will want IPO market, you will want strategic acquisition, etc. And therefore, you will see a Bangalore becoming a ecosystem for venture capital. Now, when impact investors come in, we are trying to actually invest in companies taking disproportionate risk. So we are also taking disproportionate risk. We are going in very early. We are trying to look for great entrepreneurs, and we are looking at large-scale opportunities to happen. The critical difference is we are doing all this in broken ecosystems. So we are not doing it in Bangalore. We are doing it in Bangalore, but we are also doing it in UP, Bihar, Jharkhand, Orissa, West Bengal, Northeast, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan. Now, in these states, the ecosystem is not there. Talent is a challenge, recruitment is a challenge, legality is a challenge, local registration is a challenge. And these challenges a venture capital investor doesn't want to take. So an impact investor's role is to actually go in early and try to solve some of these issues and demonstrate that despite these lacunas, you can build a strong company. And that's when you build a strong company and there is some evidence, venture capital investors and private equity investors follow through. That's really the approach. So the important distinction between an impact investor and a venture investor is the presence of a evolved ecosystem. A lack of it triggers the same venture capitalist to become impact investor, and very strong presence of a evolved ecosystem will make an impact investor also behave like a venture capital investor.
So, like, do you have any expectations for any future mini budgets that may come this year for startups?
So see, as far as we are concerned, I think from an impact investing point of view, we believe that it is nothing specific that we are looking at for ourselves, but there is a general demand that is coming from venture capital industry, and we endorse that demand, which is largely to come up with a stable, flexible, and accommodative VC and private equity guideline or structure or system that allows significant amount of global capital to be unleashed, significant amount of domestic capital to be actually encouraged, and that in the process of investing in exits, unnecessary hurdles are not placed in front of us. So the demand is really not to actually, I personally don't stand for seeking specific exceptions. What we are looking for is a fairly homogeneous and well-drafted regime that gives a lot of confidence for the capital to get into venture capital, private equity, and impact investing. And that's really our ask. So, and this will be a continuous process. So while I'm not looking at small budgets, but I'm actually looking at the progress of this dialogue or discussion that is continuously being led by SEBI and participated, and from our side, it is led by India Venture Capital Association and India Impact Investor Council. So these are the two councils that actually represent all of us collectively, and they have been leading this debate. So the best I can expect is if we can actually have a fairly stable regime. There were some announcements which so I don't know if you know this, but we are probably the first, I'm actually very confident, we are the first Indian investor who has registered itself in IFSC. And that guideline is quite new, and I think they have made that guideline slightly more flexible, trying to convince people who are actually offshore. So if you're a registered fund in Mauritius or Singapore or maybe Cayman Islands or wherever, to give you some level of flexibility to actually move your operations onshore in India without losing the flexibility of being outside in India, which is what IFSC offers. And that's actually quite a strategic and structural move, but there is a need of harmonization between what is expected for, because we are trying to encourage India to become a manager of funds for global investments. There is still a lot more work needs to be done to get close to or be at par with other destinations that already exist, like Singapore and Luxembourg and Mauritius.
Right. Thank you for those insights, Vineet. Thanks a lot.